Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I'm going to be taking more of your questions in another segment of Ask Judy. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. And this is from Lexi Ginger Dogs, who said, a couple questions you may have answered before. What is your favorite Waltons episode? Don't have a single favorite, but some top ones are An Easter Story from season 1 and The Firestorm. With the book burning stuff. The burnout, just because it was so unusual and interesting to film and intense in a lot of ways. And so, as I watch more and more episodes, I go, oh, I forgot about that one. The Best Christmas, another one that, that I loved. And then you asked favorite Mary Ellen episode. I think The Nurse was one of my favorites. I really loved that storyline, and I felt it was a real pivotal one for Mary Ellen. And I liked the hunt, the sort of the indecision between the baseball glove and the dress, and so that one I liked. An Easter Story. I thought that the stuff that with trying to decide to go to the dance or not go to the dance and having to learn to dance. So things like that. But maybe The Nurse. And then you said just thank you so much for your hard work in the show. You're very welcome. Thank you for watching. This question is from Jack Kirby, who said, when you mentioned your schedule, school to set to school, it sounded extremely fragmented, and I wondered how difficult it was to concentrate on a subject at school, then switch gears to the set and back. I could imagine getting used to it, but did you feel your education suffered because of it, or perhaps was enhanced by it teaching you multitasking? I've always been pretty good at being able to focus on what I'm doing at the time, whether it's short segmented or not. I know a lot of times over the years when I had deadlines for writing, when I was working with the theater company up in Canada, and I had a small child at one point that I was raising, or I was traveling, or that I had to be able to sit down and do it when I needed to do it. And so it's kind of always been a bit of a skill set that I can tune out other things and just focus on what I'm doing. Sometimes if I was engaged in maybe a complicated subject and was on a train of thought, it could be frustrating to have to then leave it and then come back and go, okay, where was I? And maybe backtrack and refine that train of thought to complete what I was doing. But as you said, you get used to it. And the teachers are used to it also. So they are great at assisting in guiding that and facilitating that. And if you knew you were only going to be there for a few minutes, you might choose a subject where it wasn't, you might not start something that you knew was going to be more involved and more complicated. So you had a lot of options there, and the teachers we had were fabulous. And then you said, I was thinking of outtakes, and can you share with the fans any outtakes that you found amusing and, of course, are comfortable sharing? I noticed in some interviews that some actors don't want to share them, and I get that as well. The outtakes, sometimes they were like pranky sort of stuff, like when we were around the kitchen table, maybe hiding peas in the mashed potatoes, or we didn't get into food fights because that would have been more cause more of an issue. So they tended to be things that weren't going to be destructive to the filming. Like somebody might say something, and often they might be prompted by something that went wrong. An airplane goes over. I remember Richard and Ralph one time, they were going to be going to someone's house, and as they were standing at the street, they were saying something, and all of a sudden an airplane went over, and Ralph said something, or we could catch this jet. And so they were funny at the time. Not all of them are things that when I share are going to happen. Flubbing lines within a circumstance might end up being funny at the time, but not funny later. Some of the other pranks that I thought were funny was, people would play pranks on Richard because he had a wonderful sense of humor. And one time they got this big giant stuffed moose. I mean, it was huge. And it was on wheels, and they rolled it into his dressing room. And so when he went to open his dressing room door, there was this huge moose there. So it wasn't an outtake, but it was a prank. So there were various different types of things. I think there is footage on YouTube someplace of Will and Richard mooning. They're in the hot springs, and they stand up and they moon the camera. And there was a tour bus there. There were tourists on the set at the time, so the tourists got mooned as well. Michael Learned talked about Will Gear mooning her all the time, and so those types of things would happen. And sometimes because we were doing heavily dramatic things, somebody might do something to break the tension at times. So there was just silly things like that. And then you said, finally, I'm still pondering the vulnerability of being an actor. Was it hard for you to meet the public knowing that they recognized you? And did it make you feel awkward at first or uncomfortable? And if so, how did you overcome it? It has varied over the years, and I think it varies for each person. It was a novelty at first. It's like, oh my goodness, people are recognizing me or something. And oftentimes I would be a little self-conscious about it because, you're just living your life and you don't think anything about being different than who you are. So for somebody to make a really big deal about you would make me self-conscious. But always tried to be gracious with people, and if they were hopefully being nice, sometimes people were very invasive. They'd follow you into a bathroom or something, just things that I think some things are inappropriate, and so it's a tough one to know where to set boundaries. And the thing is that oftentimes people don't recognize that if you say no, that it's because a boundary's been crossed. And so they walk away and think, oh, well, what a snob, or you're really mean, or, you were rude, and not thinking necessarily about the circumstances. And so those types of things can be tough to navigate at times, to have hope that people will have an understanding that you're a person trying to live your life, and that, maybe there's points where, to respect your right to have some personal time. So it is a tough one. But most of the time it is lovely, and, you signed up for this. So what goes with it is, if you have a successful career, you expect to be recognized, and you want to have a successful career. So therefore, it goes with the territory. So finding that, navigating it, I think, is really part of the job. And I think that sometimes I've done it well, and other times not so well. So I'm always looking to improve those things. So thanks for asking. Hopefully, the public is getting more aware of the circumstances, and maybe more understanding of what the other side is like, and what it's like for a person and their life, and how to perhaps approach in a timely and respectful way. This is from Holly Avilla, who was talking about costumes and stuff. Says, you had a community theater director who always advised us to make friends with your costume. Very true. Get comfortable in it. Learn how to live in it, as if it was really the wardrobe and the clothing that you wore every day. It's a good advice. Yeah. I was lucky never to have to wear a floor length gown, and I'm surprised the Waltons makeup was heavy. It certainly doesn't look heavy. It really was in the beginning very heavy. Everyone looks very natural and beautiful, dewy skinned. Let's see. I liked your hair half up with a bun at the crown, the rest down. Also, the bun at the nape you wore for the dance in the ring was flattering. I can't imagine the detailed attention to match up film bits and editing. Yeah, it is quite a bit of work. Then, could you possibly show us some of the makeup and techniques the artists used for the Waltons? That I don't know really that I can, but let me keep that in mind for a future episode. I know Max Factor still made and sold Pancake in the 80s. I switched to Dermablend at some point, fewer skin irritations. Environment. Did any of the cast have allergies to the film makeup? And how was that handled? I don't know how much of it was allergies and how much was just because it was so thick that your skin couldn't breathe and it just kept getting piled on and then powdered down. So the toughest thing was, trying to give your skin a chance to breathe and get it cleaned off enough that, it wasn't down deep in your pores. And when we were teens, it really contributed to the acne problems because, you couldn't keep your face clean during the day. So basically, I think it got handled by another application of makeup. So makeup on top of makeup on top of makeup, which did not help your skin at all. Did any of the cast wear false eyelashes? Not that I know of. I don't think any of us did because of the time period, and I think it would have been too obvious. And I don't think, maybe in something like the carnival, perhaps when a couple of the circus performers, maybe they had false lashes on. Maybe Elvira Drummond did when she did her performance, but none of the day-to-day people would have. You all look lovely and handsome because of your generous hearts and kind smiles. Thank you so much. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and your questions with Ask Judy. If you have a question you'd like to ask, put it in any of the comments, but don't put it in a comment chain. Just make it as a new comment. I don't always see new comments on chains, but I do see each new comment that comes up. So put it in the comments if you have a question, and I will do my best to take it up at some point in the future. I run a little bit ahead, so it's not an immediate response, but when I'm ready to do more Ask Judy segments, I pull together questions that I have put aside. So thank you very much for watching. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.